This place was the first place to make me feel welcome when I moved to Massachusetts 16 years ago. I really love it, and it's especially an honor for me to get to do this event with Alan Lightman, whose work I have admired for a long, long time. He's the author of 7 novels. He's also the author of so many works of nonfiction that I've just decided to quit trying to count them. I think it was in the 40s or the 30s. Is it that many?
Well, I don't count them, but I think I'd rather do one great book than 100 mediocre books.
Yeah, well, none of the ones that I've read were anything less than fabulous. So if you've got some others hidden away, I didn't find them. He is, I think, one of the most extraordinary artists and intellectuals in the country. And his new book, The Miraculous from the Material, is a book that I needed to read right now. I think, like a lot of people, I've spent too much time in recent years thinking about the differences I have with people. And one of the most wonderful things about this extraordinary book is that it made me focus again on how connected we all are to one another and to the world that we inhabit and to the galaxies that are out there. I think it is a truly miraculous book, so it is well titled. Alan Lightman.
Steve and I are both from the South, so we haven't done our secret handshake yet. It certainly brings us together among our writing interests. So this book has about 35 chapters in it. It's titled The Miraculous from the Material, and each chapter begins with a full-page color photograph of a beautiful natural phenomena, and I'm going to show you a few of those in just a moment. And then followed by an essay by me, which gives my personal experience with that phenomena and also explains the science behind it. And my view is that my appreciation for the beauty of nature is not diminished by my understanding of the science behind those phenomena. It's just enhanced. So since pictures are a large part of the book, Steve and I thought we would begin with me showing you a few of the full-page color photographs from the book. So can we have the first one? One after that. So the rings of Saturn. I hope that some of you have had the pleasure of looking through some large binoculars or through a telescope at the rings of Saturn. They just are a knockout. You just can't believe that anything in nature could be that perfect and so far away. Next slide, please. Spider webs. I love spider webs. I don't know about you, but I learned that if you take a strand of silk of a spider web and you compare it to a strand of steel of the same diameter, the spider silk is twice as strong as the strand of steel. So they're just amazing creatures. Next slide. Galaxies. With the naked eye, we can sort of see that white band across the sky, which is the Milky Way, our galaxy. But if you get to look through a telescope, you get to see other galaxies. They're just extraordinary phenomena of nature. Next slide. Volcanoes. The heat comes from the molten center of the Earth. Next slide. Lightning, which is basically electricity. I won't say more about that. Next, just hope that you don't get struck by lightning. These are incredible this is a incredible phenomenon. These are called mammatus clouds. I don't know whether anybody has seen one of these, but they just look unreal, just pouches. I won't go into the science of those. Next slide. These are ibis, red ibis. They're like flamingos. And I took my grandkids to this park near Boston to look at these. And when I first saw them, I thought it was, you know, a plastic installation. Next slide, please. This is a fall streak hole, and it is caused by a jet plane going through supersaturated clouds, that is, clouds that are cold enough to condense into water droplets, but they need a slight stimulation to condense. And the wings of the plane seed these supersaturated water droplets, and they clear out, they drop to the earth, and they leave this cloud. This phenomenon could only have been seen in the last 75 years or so since aircraft. It's a human-made phenomenon, and I think the first person who saw it thought it was a UFO. It's a really strange looking. Next slide. Those snowflakes, and they all have this perfect six-sided symmetry, and I explain in the book why they have this six-sided symmetry. Next. Aurora borealis, caused by high-speed particles coming from the sun that interact with the atmosphere, and they're shaped by the magnetic field of the Earth. The sun is constantly getting off very high-speed subatomic particles. Next slide. This is an incredible phenomena in Yosemite Park. It looks like molten lava flowing over the cliff, but it's actually a waterfall. And on one day of the year, at a certain time of the day, the sun is just right to illuminate the waterfall and make it look like molten lava. So another extraordinary phenomenon. Next. This is the mandarin fish, one of the most colorful organisms on Earth, and its defensive mechanism is poison, and it has all these elaborate colors to warn potential predators that it's dangerous. You need to warn a potential predator ahead of time before it takes a bite out of you. And almost every physical characteristic that we have, it had some survival benefit. So some animals have elaborate colors when they're poisonous to warn predators. Next slide. Rainbows, of course. And when I first began writing the book, I didn't know exactly why the rainbow curved the way it does in the angle of that curve, but that's explained in the book. I learned a lot in writing the book. I didn't know all these things ahead of time. Next slide, please. Bioluminescence. I don't know whether any of you have seen this, but it's a beautiful light show in the ocean caused by microorganisms that give off light when they're disturbed. Next slide. Soap bubbles. Many of you have children and grandchildren, you know that they love blowing bubbles, and so I explain why they're perfect spheres, as they are. Next slide. All of us in New England know about the beautiful fall colors, and the fall colors were actually caused by a giant asteroid that hit the Earth 4 billion years ago, because that tilted the Earth on its axis, and that tilt is what causes the seasons, and the seasons are what cause the fall colors. So sometimes accidents can produce great beauty. Next slide. These are the micro mountains in Ha Long Bay in Vietnam. I don't know if any of you have seen these, but they're made out of limestone, and their sharp sides are caused by erosion. Next slide. Spirals, this is Polyphila, And that's a very particular spiral structure called the Fibonacci spiral, which has a mathematical background, but it turns out that a lot of phenomena of nature follow certain mathematical laws. I think God was a mathematician in addition to many other things. Next slide. That might be the last one. Yes, that's the last slide.
Wow. Well, let's start with the photographs. You made the decision that you should have one of those at the beginning of each essay, which I think was a brilliant choice. Where did you get all these photographs? Obviously, you didn't take them all yourself.
No, I didn't take any of them except one of the scarlet ibis, the flamingos. Well, I learned early in the project that if I had paid a professional photographer to go around the world and take all these photographs, it would cost me about 1,000 years of royalties. So I got all the photographs in the public domain, and the requirement of photograph is that it have enough resolution to be printable in a book. Of course, a lot of photographs you see on the internet don't have high resolution. And then it had to be visually beautiful, and it had to have a story behind it.
Right. You know, the one that just made my jaw drop when I saw it was the Fall Streak Hole. And I probably sold you some books by taking screenshots of that and sending them around to friends or texting them. And everybody says, I've never seen that in my life. And I think you've never actually seen it. Is that right? So
I've never seen it.
So how did you learn about it?
Well, I did research on visually stunning phenomena. And of course, now these days you could type that in as a prompt to ChatGPT. Most of the phenomena I had seen or knew about, but there were a few like that one that came up in a little bit of internet research.
And what made you want to write this particular book?
Well, a theme that I've been pursuing for years is the intersection of science and spirituality. And I call myself a spiritual materialist. And what I mean by that is I'm a materialist in that I think that everything is made of atoms and molecules and doesn't have any supernatural essence behind it. But I also, like all of us here, have had experiences where I feel connected to things larger than myself. I feel communion with nature, communion with other people. I experience awe when I look at a sunset. I fall in love. Those are all experiences that I associate with spirituality. So that's why I call myself a spiritual materialist. And this book is sort of a representation of that in images, that I give the image of a beautiful thing and then give the explanation behind it. The book actually started one morning when I was jogging. I'm a jogger, not as fast as I used to be. And I was going by a field early in the morning, maybe about 7 a.m., and there was a mist rising above the field, maybe about 10 feet off the field. And it was really lovely. And I began wondering what caused the mist.
Right, and I wish that photograph were here, because it's a sight that most of us have seen at some time or other, unlike the Fall Streak Holes. I mean, I saw mist like that growing up in the Mississippi Delta, and then in Central California, where there's no water, the same phenomenon there. And it struck me when I looked at that photograph, just how many things I walk through the world not noticing. And I think that's one of the beautiful aspects of this book, is that it's made me newly appreciative of the world around me. And I suspect everybody's a lot like me. You know, you don't see the beauty sometimes because you're used to that environment. You make a particular statement at the beginning of the book that you don't believe in miracles, but you do believe in the miraculous. Could you say a little bit more about that?
Well, that's really another way of stating that I'm a spiritual materialist. That I don't believe that there are supernatural events, and I mean by that an event that can't ultimately be explained by science. I mean, it might take us 100 years to explain it, like consciousness, but I think eventually everything is rooted in material atoms and molecules. But all the beautiful things that we see around us, I consider miraculous, like the spider web or the waterfall that looks like it's molten lava, or rainbows or the rings of Saturn. Those to me inspire awe, and I call them miraculous.
You know, the people that I come from, in my family, no one even graduated from high school, let alone college. And when I think of certain phenomena in this book, and I imagine how, if they had experienced them, they would have viewed them, it just strikes me that, you know, they were coming at everything from a very different place. One thing in particular that made me think, you know, how would I react if I saw this, or how would my father have reacted? Ball lightning. Can you say something about what ball lightning is and how you experienced it and your reaction to it?
Is ball lightning in the book?
Find what I'm talking about.
That's okay. No, that's...
That blue ball.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you call it? I forgot.
I'm not... Well, I don't remember whether I have a chapter in ball lightning, but I have experienced it.
Okay.
And it's... has anybody here seen ball lightning? It's a very unusual phenomenon, like that hole in the clouds.
I think you mentioned it in the
mention
light.
it, yeah.
Chuck.
I probably mentioned it
Yeah.
with the light. I have a picture of it, that's right.
Right.
So it's a very unusual electrical phenomenon, and it's still not understood exactly how it happens, but what you see is during an electrical storm is you see a ball that is about 3 feet and 3 feet in diameter. It's moving, it's glowing, it moves very quickly, and then it explodes. It's really, really weird. And I saw this, I have a summer house in Maine, and I was standing on an outside deck, circular deck, right after a thunderstorm. And this blue shining ball came from the trees and went by my head a couple feet away and went through an open door and then into the house and sort of exploded with a bang in the house. And the whole thing that I described lasted about 3 seconds.
And you didn't fall down on your knees.
Well, that's the point when I said believe in the supernatural. Right then. Yeah, it's a very rare phenomenon, but it has been seen, and you can Google it, ball lightning, and you'll find various explanations, but there's no consensus on exactly. But somehow the air gets, the electrons of the nitrogen and oxygen in the air get ripped off by electricity, and congregate together, but it's really not understood exactly how it happens.
There's a moment, and I believe this is the essay dealing with cloud shape, where you say something to the effect that theoretically, if we understood exactly what all the conditions were present at a given moment, we should be able to predict the shape of a cloud. And did I get that right?
Right.
Right.
But of course, we can never understand fully all the conditions. I mean, even if we had a massive computer,
Right.
there would still be things that we would get slightly wrong. And personally, even though I'm a scientist, I'm also romantic. And I do hope that there will be some phenomena that we will never be able to fully explain. I mean, I like there be a certain element of unpredictability in the world. And I was recently having a conversation with a top neuroscientist at MIT, and we were talking about the advances of neuroscience and AI in the future. And I asked him whether he thought that at some time in the future that both neuroscience and AI would be at a level where if you did a complete brain scan of someone, you would be able to predict who they would fall in love with. That was the question I asked him. And he said, well, right now we're at about 50%. That means we can say there's a 50% chance you'll fall in love with Mary, and maybe a 40% chance you'll fall in love with Alfred. And he said, but those percentages are getting higher and higher. And I personally, I do not want a computer telling me what I'm going to fall in love with. So, yeah.
Yeah. You know, as I was rereading the book the other day, I happened across a piece in the New York Review of Books. It was a review of a memoir about Hanif Kureishi after he lost the ability to move his hands and legs and everything. And he's reflecting on the Beatles. And he says, none of them could have done what they did had they all four not been together. And he goes on to say, what happened between them is a miracle. How would you explain what happened?
You're talking about the Beatles now?
The Beatles, yes. Far-ranging conversation.
Well, I think that they were extremely talented. I mean, some of them are still alive, Paul and Ringo. And I do think there was a synergy between them that was very special. And even though they were each really talented in themselves, and I'm an amateur discussing music, so you guys probably know more about the Beatles than I do. But I just think that it was a synergy. There was I think like an 8-hour documentary on them recently, and actually showed them, in the recording studio. And you could tell that they really respected each other. They really loved each other. And I think that was part of what made them write such incredible music.
Right. The end of the book, it's getting time for Q&A, but the end was really, really moving, what you say in the last paragraph or two. And I wonder if you could possibly tell the audience a little bit about that.
Can you give me a prompt on that?
Well, I can give you the paragraph if you want it.
Just give me the first sentence.
Okay, sorry. Yosemite Firefall. Okay, so I'm thinking of this passage where you talk about what's happening now with technology. We are modifying our evolution by our own hand.
Okay, got it. So for some of you who are writers, I imagine a lot of your writers or aspiring writers, it takes about at least a year and a half between the time that you finish the draft of a book, and then it goes through an editorial process and then it's published, and sometimes you kind of forget.
Especially if you've written 40-something of them.
So anyway, so the very last chapter of the book, after going through spider webs and volcanoes and lightning and all these incredible phenomena, the last chapter is about human beings. And I think that human beings, and especially our brains, are the greatest natural phenomena that we know of in the universe. And so I sort of imagine what human beings are becoming. And we're experiencing that right now with AI and neuroscience, that we are, it's been quite a while since we've bypassed ordinary Darwinian evolution. I mean, just hearing aids and eyeglasses have bypassed Darwinian evolution, but we are now leaping ahead of Darwinian evolution, and we are developing into a new species that I call Homo techno, where we are becoming part human and part machine. And a few years ago, I had a conversation with a guy who was paralyzed from the neck down. He'd been shot in a gang war in Los Angeles. And he had agreed to have this experimental surgery done where a computer chip was implanted in his brain, and it was connected to an AI device and a robotic arm. And after the computer had been trained to interpret his brain signals, he could move this robotic arm by pure thought. For example, he could think, I want this arm now to pick up this bottle of water and bring it to my lips. And the robotic arm would do that, just by thinking, not talking, just thinking. And we are now at least 5 years beyond that in our technology. So I do think that at some time in the future, we will be part human and part machine, and we'll either have computer chips directly implanted in our brains, or we'll have sensors on the edge of our skulls that can remote sense electrical activity in the brain. And we're going to be a new species. And I just wonder what will remain, what characteristics of our humanity will remain at that point. I mean, I hope that we still have love and jealousy and compassion and awe and those things. But we're certainly going to be different when we're part computer and part human, and that's coming. We don't know exactly when that's coming, but that's definitely coming, and we're on the way there now. So it makes us think about what it means to be human.
Do we need Ellen to get to the Q&A now? Yeah, well, I did, actually. So I'll preface this by saying that a few years ago I went to visit a friend, a novelist from North Carolina, who I will let go unnamed. And I walk into his house, just the two of us. He doesn't drink a lot. He has been known to smoke certain substances. But I walk in, and there's a jug of Jack Daniels, and I figure that's for me, because he knows all this. But there's also a massive, one of those cheap, bad box wines there. And he pours me a drink, he pours himself a drink, he kills that glass just like that, and he pours himself another one, and then he kills it like that. And
You raise your hand and ask from your chair, and I am going to repeat the question for our panel here. Go ahead.
Alan, what do you think from your work with Einstein that he envisioned for the future, and you feel that much of it also came from his dreams. And then the second part of the question is, while the future looks bright from a scientific perspective, what impact will politics have on elites?
Okay, so there's two questions. One with regards to Einstein and his impact.
Well, because Alan did a book on Einstein's
Right.
dreams. What was his vision of the future?
What was Einstein's vision of the future? And then the second part of the question is the impact of politics on scientific progress.
No, it's not the elite control of the future.
Oh, the elite controlling the future.
Well, Einstein was a pacifist, and so he would be very disturbed by all of the violence and wars going on in the world right now. I think he probably hoped that the seeking of pure knowledge would bring people together. Now, the second question was, can you repeat the second question again?
What
Due to politics, will the elites actually have control?
Well, I think the word elites has a lot of negative connotations to it.
yes.
And I come from the university world, and Steve does as well, and most universities are grouped together under the elite institutions. And of course, I think we all know that the elite, that universities are coming under attack right now. I think that in some ways that universities have not paid enough attention to problems of average people. But I think, and I think that universities are willing to reform on that. There was recently a statement just a few days ago by the presidents of 150 universities, which said that they were willing to reform, but they did not like interference in curriculum, hiring, accreditation, etc. I think that a lot of the success of America has come out of universities. A lot of our technological inventions have come out of universities. So I think that, and besides science and technology, a lot of our literature and political theory and many other art have had roots in the university world. So I think that universities have added a vital part to our intellectual and cultural country. So I am concerned about the attack on academic freedom, and I hope that universities will continue banding together to try to preserve academic freedom. I'm not sure that that's an answer to your question or not.
Well, more along the lines of if you're going out to the other parts of the galaxy, and about like Elon Musk controls Starlink and Mars exploration, will the elites, not the elite universities, which we all love, will the elites, who are the power elites, control that expansion?
Will the elites control the expansion out into space?
Yes.
Well, I think that the exploration of space by the private sector is a good thing. I mean, I think the private sector there's, besides SpaceX, there's Blue Horizon, or there are a number of private companies, and I think that's a good thing. But I think it's a bad thing when that's controlled by one person. So I think the consortiums that make decisions about the exploration of space. But in principle, I think that the private sector has an important role to play, as well as the government and the exploration of space.
How would you explain the phenomenon of like two people in different countries not knowing each other, not even knowing they're doing the same thing, inventing the same thing at the same time, or things like levitation or hands-on healing, knowing who's on the phone before you answer it, all these things that are not explainable scientifically?
Well, I think that two people on opposite parts of the world coming up with the same scientific idea are easily explainable because they're at the same level of understanding and they're at the same forefront of a certain scientific problem, and they're both working on it. They don't need to be in contact in order to know where the forefronts of the problem are. But I think that you were talking about something else, like telecommunication, something like that. Well, I don't have any explanation for that. Being a spiritual materialist, I don't think that there's anything supernatural going on there. So I think that there is ultimately some rational explanation for that. I do know that at certain times, certain ideas are in the air in the culture, and people pick up on those ideas either directly or indirectly.
I think they're looking at the same things on Facebook.
Yeah. Not a question per se, but in looking at the images, I'm struck by how a catalyst seems to be involved in so many of them. It could be the airplane wing, the sun at a particular angle illuminating the waterfall. I mean, even Saturn, the catalyst being a moon that got too close and got torn up. So I'm wondering if maybe providing a catalyst is some innate property of the universe. I mean, even the Beatles, as talented as they were, perhaps the catalyst was George Martin, the recording engineer. So not necessarily conscious. Do you think that that might be a property of the universe to provide a catalyst?
Want to answer that one?
You do it.
Well, of course, I agree that the catalysts or stimulants cause a lot of phenomena. And if you believe in cause and effect, which I do, any phenomena has something that caused it, which has something that caused that. And so eventually you can reach a primary cause, and you can say, label it, that's the catalyst, without which this chain of events wouldn't have occurred. So it really depends on what you label a catalyst, or how far back you trace that chain of cause and effect. I certainly agree with the Beatles that George Martin played an enormous role in their success. I mean, he was a genius possibly of equal stature as Paul and Ringo and John and so on. I mean, he was a genius for sure.
I'll try and speak, Bobby, can you hear me? Okay?
Yeah.
This may be better. So, if I may, as a scientist, there's another scientist, I read a book of his a few years ago, and most people probably have heard about it. He was a neurosurgeon and did not believe in God, the afterlife, until he actually experienced having a coma. And in the area of the brain, it's very difficult for the subconscious or any kind of thought to actually happen. And so Dr. Eben Alexander wrote a book about his experience, near-death experience, and quite frankly did not believe. It was very much data-driven, and it seemed to have changed his life. So I'm trying to, as a scientist, not to talk about his book, but to get your perspective on being data-driven, then somebody very much a scientist, a neurologist on top of it who's very data-driven, have an experience like that. What's your thought about that? How would you explain that from your perspective?
Well, a lot of has been written down and recorded about near-death experiences, and the brain starts shutting down, and different neurons start behaving in ways that they hadn't done before. And I think that we all, since all of us have basically the same brain, that produces this.